Hello, guys. Hey, it's Dave Zeldray with Blueline Design. Appreciate you coming back to my channel, where this week I am going to show you how I created a toy prototype. Now, in my former life, I actually worked in the makeup effects industry for about 10 years. I worked on movies like Starship Troopers and Blade and Alien vs. Predator, all kinds of wacky little monster movies. We would make fake bodies, creature suits, big monsters. So I did a lot of sculpting and mold making and painting in that. Recently, I watched a video from the Craftsman on how to make a toy prototype. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the Craftsman. He is fantastic. You got to watch his stuff. He shows you all things toys and making your own toys. Me and my kids love watching it. It's just great, and it's really funny too. He's got a great sense of humor. I watched one of his videos on how to make a toy prototype. I was really inspired by it. So what I did is I took a character from a kid's comic book I'm working on right now. It's like kind of like these bad guy tiki aliens. I used that as the inspiration for the toy prototype. It's about 5 days of work funneled into about 5 minutes. If you really want to learn how to do all the mold making and everything, I will leave a link in the description below for the Craftsman's channel. Enjoy watching the process. So the first thing I start off with are turns, which are drawings that are going to help me figure out what this little sculpture is going to look like from different angles. Right here, what I did is I just took the front, I flipped it around, and now I'm drawing the back so that I can figure out these problems or see potential problems before I get into the sculpting phase of it. What I found is that it's easier to change a drawing than it is to change clay, so I'm able to just figure out a lot of the direction of this in the drawing phase first. Then I add a little bit of gray tone so I can figure out some of the volume of the actual sculpture and some of the planes. Here I just do a quick little study to figure out the ball joints and how this little figurine is going to come together. Once this is completed, now I'm ready to start the sculpting process. So the first thing I do is I make a little armature. So I take some armature wire and then wind up some smaller armature to keep the clay onto it. The armature acts like the bones that the clay will live on top of. So for the legs and the head, I used a plastilina clay that would give me some stiffness to it so that I could sculpt in some of the angles that I wanted. So how I approached this is I wanted to sculpt and mold the head and the legs first, since that was the main part of it, and then all the other details like the arms and weapons and the little spikes would come later. One of the hardest parts of this project was just trying to remind myself that it is only a prototype. It's not the actual toy, that I'm just trying to develop something in dimension that would sell the idea and not get hung up on making it perfect. What you can do for eyes and teeth and claws is make them out of Sculpey, boil them in hot water for about a minute or two, and then it gives you a hard piece to sculpt around. Once I have the sculpture pretty much blocked out, I use different kinds of rakes to smooth it out, and also I will use 91 or 99% rubbing alcohol with a brush to do smoothing as well. So I'll use Super Sculpey for the smaller parts like the arms and the weapons. I will then boil them because it's easier to mold something that's hard than soft. Now I'm ready to start mold making, so I use cups and hot glue them around the pieces.
Y'all ever see measuring cups like this? But look at it. It's like a little tiny one. Oh, that was good. That's some sweet tea.
So before I molded these, I crystal cleared them with spray, and what I'm using here is Mold Star 15 Slow, which is a 2-part silicone. So you gotta make sure you scrape the sides good, and then what I did is poured it high because I do not have an evacuator to take the bubbles out. Then I get a nice sharp X-Acto knife for the demolding process. So here I'm using Moldcast 65D casting resin to quickly cast all the pieces before that material goes off. And the moment of truth is that I get to demold all the pieces and see how well everything turned out. Next is the assembly process, where I file off all of the seams and fill in any bubbles, glue everything together to get ready for priming it. I would suggest using a good modeling primer so that you don't fill in all the details. So here is the final prototype, which I was really happy with. There's lots of imperfections in it, but to sell the idea of a prototype, I think it works. It was about half a dozen molds just to get all the pieces to put this together. I was really happy with the fact that you can actually move the arms with the ball socket. It's not a toy to be played with, obviously, but it would sell the idea of an action figure. And overall, it was a great learning experience. I really enjoyed it.
So I hope you like watching that video. It was a lot of work. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button or the subscribe button, it'd really help me out. Next week, I plan to paint that toy prototype. So until then, keep drawing and keep designing.